I'm really happy to have Darrin Paley from Wheatstone with us. When I was at the NAB show in April, one of the things that I saw were some of the new consoles that Wheatstone is. What do you mean new consoles? Don't we have enough consoles? And and not only were they new, but one of them was analog. Now, why would we have analog consoles? Everybody's going digital, are they? Well, not really. And that's kind of where we're going to head here for a while and see some of the things that Darrin's got under his arm there and talk about them, answer your questions. So, Darrin, let's get started and tell
Yeah.
us about the AML, will you?
Yeah. Well, let me introduce myself. My name's Darrin. Last name is Paley, Paley. I've been here at Wheatstone for 24 years, going on 25 next year. I started off in broadcast at my father's company up in Canada called Oakwood Broadcast. Most of you probably know my father is Ron Paley, founder of Media Touch and now owner of DJB Radio Automation. Um, so I've been in broadcast for nearly 30 years. I started off my relationship with Wheatstone by being a dealer for them up there. Later on, quick thing, my father sold companies and I was out of a job, and Wheatstone hired me and I came down here to North Carolina. Um, so as you know, Wheatstone, everybody knows the Wheatstone name. What most people don't know is Wheatstone started off back in the 60s as Audio Arts. It was never Wheatstone back in the early days. It was Audio Arts Engineering. And just a quick little history thing here. Audio Arts actually was not in broadcast. Audio Arts was in, call it discos or clubs, that sort of thing, making notch filters, parametric EQs, disco mixers, all those sorts of little small rack mount gear, etc. Just so happened to be back in those days, a lot of those disc jockeys at the stations also worked in these discos. One thing that they noticed at these disco clubs is that the consoles they were using never failed, with drinks spilt all over them, cigarette ashes, whatever the case was. The Audio Arts consoles just kept working. And unlike their consoles in their studios, they were just not as dependable. And so back then, these disc jockeys had told their engineers about this name called Audio Arts. And at that point, engineers started reaching out to our owner, Mr. Snow. And that's when the idea of broadcast consoles was dropped in his lap. So, due to the name of the Audio Arts brand, he didn't want to jeopardize the name going into a brand new market he did not know much of. And he decided to name his broadcast portion of his company after his favorite tester instrument, the Wheatstone Bridge. And that's where the name Wheatstone came from. And so Wheatstone Corporation was born and came out with its first broadcast consoles. Many years later, Mr. Snow realized that he was missing a large market um, with console, console sales, which was the mid to small market. And that's when he brought back the Audio Arts Engineering name and targeted that product pretty much to the mid to small markets, price point wise. So, although all our products are made and designed by the same engineers here at Wheatstone, whether it's the Audio Arts name or the Wheatstone name, the same engineers are designing them. What makes the products different is one, price point and the way they're manufactured. So over the years, we were very strong in analog. We've moved to the digital world, in standalone digital consoles, and then into the routing world, and then of course into control surfaces, which where we at today with WheatNet IP and IP systems. However, some of the small market LPFMs, podcasters want to operate like a radio station studio, and therefore they need some lower price products. So the Audio Arts name is kind of where we're targeting and or what we're talking about today. And what we released at NAB was some new products that would fit the mold for those mid to small markets, LPFM podcasting. One of the products Barry was talking about, actually, what we did is we released what we called our DML. And the DML is, I have a console right here. We have two versions of this. One's a 12 fader and one's an 8 fader. And the DML is our digital version of the, call it, small platform console. The DML was an all digital console. And what we decided before the NEB is that really there's still a market for an analog console. So we came out with a little sister called the AML. And the AML is an all analog console. And I'll kind of go over some of this as we go through it. The next thing was price point and target, as far as where would this fit in, and who are we targeting with this. The DML consoles start at 5,000 and go up from there, and I'll cover that console in a little bit, and I'll take it apart for you so you can see how it's built. But the AML, which is probably going to be the popular of the three, this guy is $1,500 retail. So what this console has to offer is going to give you 2 mic pre's. So 2 faders are dedicated to your mic preamps, to your microphones. And then it's going to give you 5 line level audio inputs. And then the last fader down on the end is a USB fader, which on the back of the console, you're going to have a USB port right here that connects a computer to your console. So that's going to bring one audio play out from your computer into the console. And then it's also going to send the program 1 bus back to that computer. So it's got 2 buses. You'll see it's got 1 and 2 buses, and it's got a queue. And it also provides a mix minus output for your caller on fader 5. So for this console, everybody asks, well, how big is that console? And if you want to, the width of the console's 16 1/4 inches wide. The depth of the console from front to back is going to be 14 inches. And then the height of the console, which you can see here, is 3 inches from the bottom to the top of the meter bridge. The main part of the console, this portion right here, is about 1 inch off of your countertop. So it's very small. It does provide all of your mutes. It does have a tally output for an on-air light. So it does have all the broadcast features that somebody'd be looking for. Barry just threw it up on the screen there. So we call it the AML8 Azalea. That's the other name for it. So it's got 2 names, AML8 and then Azalea. We are in the process of final product testing, and then mass production will be starting most likely at the end of November, and they should be shipping by the end of December. As far as the I/O on the console, Barry, if you got that slide, you will see the back of the console. It might be, yep, there you go. So there's the rear of the console. And everything's on RJ45, which is based off of the Studio Hub standard for the dongles that everybody's used to using these days. You will see a power supply connector as you're looking at the slide to the left. You'll see a to the other side. There you go. That's the power supply connector. And there is an external power supply for this console that Wheatstone actually manufactures. Barry, if you put me back up there, I don't know if anybody can see me, but this is a power supply right here that is specifically designed to be used with this console. And this is called our HPS 516. And this power supply is designed to be used with multiple consoles, the AML, the DML, our DMX series, and our IP12 series. Therefore, you will see all these connectors on the back. And depending which surface you have, that's going to be one of the ports that you'll be plugging into. So it is an external supply built and designed by Wheatstone, not an off-the-shelf supply from China or a brick supply. You can buy a rack mount kit for this if you want to as well. That'd be a separate purchase. The internals of the console, I'm going to show it to you here. How the console is built actually is really 3 pieces. You have the frame, and on the frame, basically you have, on the AML, you don't have the end caps, but on the DMLs, you have these end caps. But you have the frame. Then you have the circuit board, which everything's mounted to the circuit board. So it's a front and rear circuit board. And then you have basically the metal top. So you can see the circuit board's connected to the metal top. All your IO connectors are connected to the circuit board. And all you do is you slide it in, put it onto the frame, and you slide it in, and then the connectors line up to the back. And then you've got basically a full console. So on the circuit board itself, again, we design the circuit board here at Wheatstone. We order them. This is the only thing we don't manufacture here at Wheatstone is the raw PCB. We design it, we order it in, and it comes unloaded. Then here at Wheatstone, all of your electronics is all mounted to the circuit board, and then we assemble it here, package it, and then ship it out from Wheatstone. The faders on these particular consoles are Cellmark faders, and again, they're surface mount. They are not a drop in or a screw through the panel. Again, it's just more of a cost thing for manufacturing, getting to price points. All the switches that you see on the AML and DMLs are the same switches we use on our DMX, our IP12, our IP16, and our L series surfaces. So it's a switch that we've used for many, many, many years. The switches also do have a finger guard on them for your on-off buttons as well. Other than that, when you go to the DML series, the DML, what people may not realize, the DML is all digital. You're going to have your microphones that are analog in. Everything else on the console is digital, whether it's AES or SPDIF on the input side. And on the output side for your program outs, you're going to have digital outputs, AES. All your monitoring outputs are going to be analog. So that's the differences between the AML and the DML. Do we have any questions for me on what I've covered so far? Don't be shy.
What do you use for adapting RCA or XLR to the RJ45?
So basically, we sell them. Mary also sells other products as well, such as Studio Hub. You're going to use a straight through RJ45 cable. Patch cable, your standard patch cables. You can also buy, grounded cables if need be. But there's adapters, and the adapters are going to be an RJ45 female. They're about maybe 4 inches long or so. It's going to be an RJ45 female, and then the other end is going to be of your choice. You can get them in RCA, you can get them in 1/4 inch, you can get them in XLR male, XLR female. You can get them bare-ended to put your own connectors on. You can get mini jacks. You can get. Am I missing any, Mary? You deal with these more than I do, but I think that's the majority of the adapters you can buy. They run anywhere between $16 to $20 an adapter. And then the patch cables, you can buy those from Studio Hub, or you can, build your own patch cables as needed with your lengths.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can buy almost anything that you need to hook up to it in an adapter.
Yep. Yeah, and if you don't like the adapters, you can also buy cables that are already made. So it's going to have an RJ45 male on one end, and on the other end will be your XLR male, XLR female, 1/4 inch connector, RCA, whatever you want. You can buy those in all different lengths if you'd rather have just a cable than another connection.
Thank
Hey,
you, sir.
Darrin.
The main reason why we've moved, or why everybody's moved to the RJ45s, is simply the amount of space they take up. You can fit a lot of connectors in an area. And starting back in with our bridge router back in 2003, we started using the RJ45 connectors on the back of our router back then. Now essentially it's a standard in the industry.
Those connectors are also a lot less expensive than
Oh
other
yeah.
connectors, even with adding the adapter.
Yeah.
Hey, Darrin.
Yes, sir.
Um, I admit I'm not familiar with the DML series.
Okay.
But you said that it's AES. Is that AES 67, and are you running blades into it, or what are you doing?
So the AML and DML are, let's start here. The AML and DML are standalone consoles. They have nothing to do with networking. It is basically a standalone board. So the inputs, we call them AES digital. So it'll do SPDIF or AES in on the input side. On the output side, for your program outputs, it's going to be AES digital leaving the console. No AES 67, has nothing to do with networking. Now on the DML does have an option that you can license, and it has a WheatNet IP network port. So when you buy the console, it's a standalone console. If you have a WheatNet IP system, you can license the WheatNet IP port. I don't know what it's costs right now. I believe it's like $350 or $400, and it'll unlock that port and allow you to connect that console to a WheatNet IP network. Now, all it does though is it's going to put your 3 program buses that's on the DML onto the WheatNet IP network to be able to route wherever you want to go. It does not bring in IO from the network to the console. All that remains local to that studio.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. Thank you.
Okay. And the what was I going to hit on that? The ML8.
Talk about the USB for a moment, would you?
Sure. So the AML and the DML consoles all have USB connection. The AML8 and the DML8 have a single USB connection. When you plug in your Mac or your PC, it will automatically ask you if you want to use that USB as your audio card. And when you click yes, all your audio driven from that computer on whatever you're running audio through will be sent out that network, or sorry, that USB port into the console. And then on the output feed from the console on that USB, because it's an actual input and an output, on the output of that USB going back to that computer, call it a record in, it will send your program audio back into that computer in order to record whatever you need to. On the DML8 or DML12, sorry, the bigger console, the one I have here, that one has 2 USB ports. So that allows you to do 2 PCs. And the DML12 also has Bluetooth.
Hi, Darrin. This is Pierre. Does it have a cell phone interface?
The DML12 has a cell phone interface with the Bluetooth. The AML8 and the DML8 do not. You would have to use an external, Bluetooth gizmo or whatever, Angry Audio builds or wherever you get that. We do provide a mix minus in and out, wired. But if you want to do some sort of cell phone with Bluetooth, then you'd have to, on those 2 consoles, you have to go externally.
Thank you.
No problem. So a lot of people are asking, well, what's this? We understand where the AML is targeted to, which is an analog console, which can basically be dropped in and replace an analog console that's already existing. So what's the market, or what's the idea of the DML? What we've done here with the DML is we anticipate that, coming up, what's getting really popular is going to be, brand new studios, small market LPFM, brand new studios. And with that, you have the ability to order an inexpensive digital standalone console, and all the equipment you can order these days, whether it be a CD player or some sort of codec or a telephone hybrid or whatever, a computer, whatever it may be, you can get any of that gear now with a SPDIF or AES in and out. So on a brand new build, if you're interested in a DML, all that ancillary equipment other than your microphones, you can order with SPDIF or AES. Therefore, in comes all your sources coming into the console in the digital form. We do have, on all the digital ins, we do have a sample rate converter. So if your digital gear is at a different sample rate, we'll convert it to the sample rate of the console. And then on the output side, we're an AES 3 output digital for your programs 1, 2, and 3. So the idea for the DML is brand new small market stations that have no equipment whatsoever. And then the other portion of it, we do have a lot of customers that have WheatNet IP facilities, and they have these small little newsrooms or edit rooms that they want to put some sort of small console in, and take the outputs of that and then send them back over the network, whether it be to some computer running a WheatNet IP driver or directly to air. But any of the I/O or any of the inputs, the source audio would be local to that studio. So that's the idea of the DML.
Well, let's say we have a LPFM station. How would they choose between the AML and the DML?
Well, the first thing they're going to look at is faders. How many faders do they need? Do they need 8 faders or do they need more? So that would be your first decision. If the 8 fader, then that brings you to 2 choices. Okay, I got my AML or I got my DML. The question is going to be, at that point, if it's just a standalone studio, do I already have existing source gear? And if you do, and you look at it and you've got mostly analog, which everything has an analog output for the most part, AML is probably your choice. If you are building a new studio and you're buying everything right from scratch, then the DML might be your choice. So, but there's a big price difference, $1,500 for the AML, $5,000 versus for the DML. So, the other thing is going to be budget. If you know that you got a small budget, AML right away is probably going to be the one that's calling for you.
Especially if you're going to go into a home studio or something like that.
Yeah, it's really small. It's most people think that this console is going to be aluminum. It's going to be not heavy. This thing is built of steel. It probably weighs a good 10, 12 pounds. It's not a light console whatsoever. It's solid. When you lay it on the table, it doesn't move. It's a sturdy console. We didn't cut corners on audio quality or call it parts from some of our other products. What we did is we designed the console to have the least amount of man hours to assemble it, if that makes any sense. When you look at it, and I said that, hey, we got all of this card minus these faders is done on a surface mount machine. These faders are then put on by a human. The metal here is cut on the laser and then basically bent, because you can see, I don't know if you can see it, but it's curved on the armrest. So it's bent. And then it goes to powder coat, silk screened, and then it's ready for that circuit board to be put onto it. So the assembly time, same thing with the frame. The frame's cut out on the laser, bent, powder coat, and then it's waiting for this. So the assembly time to assemble one of these consoles is very minimal. It's, you can, when all the parts and pieces come together, one person will be able to assemble this console in less than 20 minutes.
Well, that's how you can keep the price down.
Exactly. It's all about, what's the most expensive part? It's not the circuit boards and it's not the parts, it's labor. And if we're going to keep manufacturing here in the US, we've got to find out ways in order to keep the labor down in order to be price competitive.
Right. Joe Niffin on the chat box asks you, are either consoles field serviceable, the on-off switches, etc., or is the plan to send the system board back to Wheatstone for service?
Okay. Great question. Thank you for that question. Well, the top side of the console, which you're looking at here, this is going to be the circuit board that you're dealing with. So in order to get this out of the console, you're going to take one, let's see, the AML's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 screws you're going to take off the top of the console, and the entire metal part is going to come off. Once you get that off, you're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You're going to have 12 more screws to take this off. Once you get this off, you can replace in the field your encoders. That's your, that's your level and Q encoders. You can change out your switches, and you can switch out your faders. Other than that, none of the backside is going to be serviceable. So if a drink spill happens or something happens to the backside, all of this is surface mount, which would require your special tools in order to service any of that. But the full front side, the part that will take most of the daily use, that can be serviced in the field. Good question.
But at that price point too, you could buy an extra board and put on the shelf.
Yeah, great point. I do not know if this will be sold as an assembly. Again, I'd have to. I don't know if it will or will not. But you can also send it in for repair. That's not a problem. We do all our repairs in house. But if this is sold as assembly, then yes, you would be able to technically have one of these on the shelf. I just don't know if it will be sold as an assembly or not.
Well, theoretically, you would not want to be in the position to say, I'm sending this to you and I have nothing to use right now. So swapping the board out might be a thing that folks might want to try.
Yeah, and it all depends what happened to it. I mean, if it's a lightning strike, I mean, you don't know what happened to it. I mean, the problem could have. I mean, when we look at these circuit boards and we design these circuit boards, these circuit boards are 7 to 9 layers now. So sometimes when these things take a lightning strike, there's something inside the layers that have happened not visible by the eye, and if that happens, it's just unrepairable. Drink spills, I mean, depending how much, as you all know, depends how much sugar's in it, I mean, could wreak some havoc on a circuit board pretty quickly. But I mean, like I said, most of the stuff on the top side of it that most of your fingers are going to touch and going to be using, or that would take any sort of those spills or beatings, all that is serviceable. Any of the important parts of it on the backside, that most likely won't be serviceable. I don't know if you can see some of those, but they are like this chip right here is called a ball grid array, BGA. So all the actual connections to that chip are underneath it. You don't even see any of the legs. So they're all tiny little pads underneath that chip. In order to get that chip off, there's special equipment in order to get this chip off. So something like that, there's just no way that somebody will be able to do that in the field. And there's times when we here at the factory totally ruin a circuit board trying to get one of these off. So we're the ones that make it, and we're the ones that have the tools, but there's times that we can't even do it. But there's no way to test that chip. That chip, it's tested before it gets put on.
In a home studio environment, assuming 4-hour show, five days a week, how long, based on the components you're using, how long would you anticipate the console itself would hold up?
Well, based on our past and based on products we've done in the past, and Mary can tell you as a dealer, working with these customers, the Audio Arts brands, they've been in the field for 10, 12, 15. I got some customers on 20 years. Something like this in a lower price market, do we anticipate this console being on the air or somebody behind it for 9 to 10 hours a day? Probably not. But it just all depends. It all depends on the use. It all depends on how much it's used. The switches we use, and we know they're good for millions of presses. The faders, we know that they have a lot of, let's call it throws, if you want to call it that. We know what the specs are. We've done fader testing. Marty Moses, in I call him Q. He's like the James Bond Q guy. He's got all these gadgets in his office where he has what we call a fader runner and a counter. So when we're looking at faders and parts, he puts his fader on there, and he has this automated machine that takes these faders up and down, and it counts how many times. And then every so often he tests that fader. And so when we take these Cellmark faders or the P&G faders or stuff we're looking at, we actually run them through our own tests and say, okay, well, that fader got to 80,000 slides before it started to show something. So the question's kind of a loaded question where, do we anticipate this console failing in a year or 2 years? Absolutely not. How long will it last? It all depends on how much it's used. Sort of like a car, a car with less miles is going to probably have some oil leaks before any big maintenance issues. A car that's driven a lot is probably going to need brakes and various other things, because it's driven a lot. A car that gets driven a lot is probably going to end up not working sooner than a car that's not driven a lot. So it's the same quality of what Audio Arts. We're not going to put out stuff that is not behind our name. We've been in the broadcast industry for 50 years, and people associate Audio Arts and Wheatstone as good brands and reliable brands, and that's something we don't want to tarnish.
Joe Niffen
Yeah,
mentions his
Darrin.
R60 for 22 plus years.
Yeah, this is Pierre. Like all of my consoles, we had Ward Beck when I first got here in '83. Then we went to Wheatstone. The only thing that happened was the consoles aged out. We had the A500, the A whatever, the D75s, and
Yep.
now we have the audio over IP. So, reliability was good, and I had some crazy announcers. And they survived all those people, 16 different volunteers for years. So, I think the thing is not that it'll die on you. I think it's just going to age out technology-wise.
Yeah. And, we have a repair department. We have a 5,000 square foot parts department. We still repair and service some of the Audio Arts gear that Gary Snow, our owner, built himself in the 60s. We still have people using that gear, sending it in for repair. And believe it or not, we still do have parts. If we don't have brand new parts, we have what we call, what do we call it? We call it old stock, if that's one word for it. But we have a whole wall in our parts department that's nothing but old gear that people just sent back to us saying, hey, put this on your shelf in case somebody needs something. And I can go back there on one of our tours. I can show you that we got equipment back from the 60s that's up on the shelf. And sure enough, somebody will send in a notch filter that Mr. Snow built back in the 60s, and they need some component out of it. And sure enough, we'll bring that down and we'll say, hey, we can repair this with a component that we have, but it's not a brand new component. Is that something you want to do? Oh, as long as I can get that back, absolutely. That's great that you can even do that. So we have that area that we try to keep stuff here that we can service our products for as long as we can for our customers.
Well, I'll look forward to that tour. Maybe we can set it up for next month or January, whichever works for you.
Yeah, no, I can grab my phone. We'll set it up, Barry, and what we'll do is we'll do a good thorough tour of the stock room, show you all the parts we got, show you that wall of all of our old stock stuff, and show you the metal shop, and we can go through the the power supply test area. We can go into the powder coat room, go to the silk screening room, show you how our silk screening's done. How we make the silk screens themselves, go to the surface mount area, show you how that works, and show you the assembly lines and the test area and the stock room. So it's an actual a good tour will take about an hour and a half. A good tour. That's usually when I have somebody here. I won't take that with you guys, but I will definitely do that.
I look forward to that. Okay.
Is there any questions? I know we covered the AMLs and DMLs. Is there any questions while any of you have me here about any of our other products? Maybe it's our IP product. Maybe it's one of our voice processors. Maybe it's a Vox Pro. Does anybody have any questions about anything that else that we have or that maybe you have?
I'll just mention that if they do, they can press their space bar or alternate A to unmute.
All right. Okay, I see down here there's someone has a question on a Lightning 12. Let's see, what is this? Are the faders washable? Okay, let's see here. R60 22 plus years. None of our consoles died. Yeah, that's Pierre. Okay. Are the faders washable? Well, I can tell you this. The first thing that we do if somebody sends in a circuit board like this to us or takes the console to us, the first thing we do, and they say they took a drink spill, the first thing we do is we take a circuit board out of the metal and we take it to our dishwasher and we put the whole circuit board in the dishwasher. Then we take the circuit board and we put it into our heat room. And then in our heat room, that sits there for 1 or 2 days for it to dry out. Once it's dried out, we will then take this and test the circuit board. We'll go through all the faders. We'll go through everything to see what's working and what's not working. So they're washable. You can actually take a fader cleaner if you had to the slides. If you wanted to actually wash the fader, you'd probably want to take it off the board and wash it that way if need be. Lightning 12 in comparison to the AML. Two different animals. The Lightning console has a lot more logic. It has it's semi-modular. It's definitely a lot larger. It has more buses. So it's two ends of the spectrum. We're talking a price point of $7,000 on the Lightning to $1,500 on the AML. Audio spec wise, they're going to be the same as far as audio specs go. We use the same mic preamps. We use a lot of the same components for your audio. But as far as comparison from one to the other, how do they match up? We're in two different ballparks. One's a minor ballpark and the other one's going to be a professional ballpark, if you want to call it that. But they're designed by the same engineers. And like I said, many of the components are the same. And a lot of the circuitry is the same, just built in a different way, semi-modular versus non-modular.
Will the AML replace the Air 1?
So yeah, so the idea is going to be that the AML is going to replace the Air 1. The feature set on the Air 1 and the AML is very, very much the same. The AML or the Air 1 is a lot more cost in manufacturing. Obviously, it has all those 1/4-inch connectors on the back for connecting everything up. But the idea is, I heard that we've done our last production run of the Air 1.
So, Darrin, are you going to ever put a fiber connection on your consoles?
No. I mean, it's a good idea. I mean, is it a good idea? Sure. But which fiber do you go with? Do you go single mode, multi-mode? So we choose one and somebody wants the other.
Yeah. Well, short distance multi-mode, I'd say.
Yeah, I'm on. Are you talking on the IP side of things, Pierre?
On the IP side, yeah.
Typically on the IP side of things, we rely on switches for that. Obviously, Cisco or Netgear, whichever, we got a couple of approved switches now. But they would be the ones that would do our fiber from connection to connection. As far as fiber on the back of our products, there is no talk about that at this point. If anything, you'd probably get a fiber to copper converter if you wanted to do that, which you can buy in a tiny little box. But it'd be an expense that very few would use.
Yeah, I was just wondering, just in case. You never know.
Yeah. Thanks for the question on that. Field serviceable. I saw that. I answered that at 1,500. You can have a spare. Let's see. I answered Pierre's R60. Yep. Okay. I'm just making sure I didn't forget any questions here. Does anybody else have any other questions?
So I have a question. Where do you see the future of consoles going? On a display screen surface, or I'm an old guy. I kind of like to have things to touch with faders and stuff instead of the screen,
Sure. I don't have it in front of me, but where do we see things going? Well, we definitely saw a trend start about 2-3 years ago. And 2-3 years ago, the glass console started to become a thing. We've had it for many years before that, but we never saw groups or companies or broadcasters want to use a glass surface 24/7, if that's probably the best way to put it. So what we started to see is on the IP side of things, that broadcasters were buying physical surfaces for their air studios and then saving a whole bunch of money and buying glass consoles for their production rooms. Where we first saw this was about 6 years ago at WTOP in Washington, D.C. When we did that project, every single one of their news desks, which is 58 of them, do not have a console or a mixer in front of them. It's on a screen. So all they have in front of them is one of our TS4s, which give them a tactical on and off button and a volume control for their headphones. But all their mixing and everything else is all done on a screen. That was one of the very first sites that deployed that many in one install. After that, we started seeing a swing to production room stuff. And last year, 2 years ago, we then started seeing full facilities, air studios, and production rooms move to glass consoles. A couple of reasons for it. One, it's a lot less expensive. Two, to replace a screen is a whole lot less expensive to replace a console. Three, you have no maintenance on any knob, button, fader, encoder, whatever it may be. But four, what the broadcasters noticed is there was a big turnover in staff. And most of their staff, 80 to 85%, were from generations using iPhones and iPads forever. Were the dinosaurs that are used to using buttons, Pierre, they were the ones that had to adapt. But the funny part was it only took them 2 to 3 weeks and they loved it. So where do we see radio going, or broadcast studios going? We're seeing the trend of physical consoles in the IP world, if that's where you are, going away, or a lot less of them and more of them going to glass consoles or software. It's just, I'm working on a project right now. We started off with physical consoles, and it looks like they're going with all 4 studios of glass consoles. So now for us as a manufacturer sucks, because you're looking at a project that was $100,000 project and it's now down to $60,000 or $55,000, and we don't have people having to make anything. We got people typing to make the software. So to us, it's definitely a change. We're quickly becoming a software company more than we are a hardware company. So it's a change for us.
Get your VR console out there now.
Yeah.
My kid showed me his VR stuff. He works in IT, and since he lives rent free, he spends all of his money on computer shit.
Right.
So I looked at his VR stuff, and I was really astounded. I know about it, and I've seen a few examples, but I said, "Holy cow!"
Mm-hmm.
You can get vertigo just doing some of that stuff.
Yeah.
So I said a VR console.
Yeah. Now you got to think about it too. Is when you look at the glass console, you have the glass console. You have the console on the computer, but you still need inputs and outputs. Mm-hmm. So where do those come from? At that point, you're now looking at, our blades, some sort of device that's somewhere underneath the counter that's going to bring ins and outs. And then that console is going to talk to a mix engine of some sort somewhere. So the cost of ownership, is it going to replace an AML? Is it going to replace this cost-wise? Just no way. It's just, there's blades involved, there's computers involved. You need I/O. So is it going to replace that in a broadcast studio? No, unless you've got the budget. You're a $1,500 console, or you're looking at $20,000 for a glass console. So it's a big difference. Yes, functionality's higher. Yes, you get all these other things with a glass console, but does somebody really need that for a small radio station? Probably not.
It's a real good question. I once had someone ask me, should I go buy this particular console? 20 pots he wanted. And I said, you can't even fill up half that with the A, much less the B side. He says, what do you mean? I said, well, sit down, write down what you need to do.
Mhm.
You got your, especially now with automation, you're going to take up one, maybe two with automation. You're going to have a couple of microphones, maybe a CD player or DVD player for standby, and networking. Well, now you're what, 6, 8? That's why you guys built an 8, isn't it?
Yeah, typically the number of faders that we usually see for small market radio, small market LPFM, 8 is the magic number. 12 is ideally the perfect number. Usually the 12 is kind of that console that fits most everybody. Either you're 2 faders too high with a 12, 10 is really what they want. So an 8 is like, oh, you're 2 fade. We need 2 more faders would be perfect. You go to a 12, oh, we need 2 less faders. Can we, the IP12 is one of our most popular consoles, and everybody says, can I take 2 faders out of there and give them back to you? No, you have to buy it that way, but I can things. So so yeah, so it's a 12 is usually the spot on, but podcasters, LPFMs, small radio stations for small markets, 8 faders seems to be the magic number. And that's sort of why we came out with the ML8.
I've seen that in several places. Yeah.
Mhm.
Good.
Now, what?
But the question I had actually asked Frank Foti just a couple of weeks ago, and you make audio processors as well, and they pretty much live in the computers, and as we're moving further ahead, perhaps in the cloud processing as a service, things of that nature. So, while you say yes, there's less work for the hardware guys, your company equally is invested in people who write code and develop things that only live in computers or specialized hardware as well. And the question I had asked him, pretty much going out the door, was, as you look to the future, are you a software company selling maintenance licenses or a hardware company? Frank's answer was he thought his company was going to be both for the foreseeable future. People will still want boxes and still want things they can touch. I'm sure you guys discuss this, was sitting around the conference room table every now and then as well.
Yeah, I mean, what are we, sure, we're making a whole lot more software, and we have coders obviously on staff that, I'm talking 15, 20 years ago, we didn't have that. Now we've got a whole team that just nothing but coding. Just like Telos, I mean, same thing with us, we build our own hardware to house our own software. But what we're learning now is the software that we do build needs to be or capable of being housed in not only our own hardware or our own devices, but we also got to build it so it can be housed on a server of some sort, whether it's Docker or some sort of server. So the big trend right now, or the trend spinning up right now, is not so much cloud, it's more on-prem. So the companies want to build their own cloud. They don't want to rely on AWS or other cloud services. They want to build their own servers or in their own server farms. And instead of having, 20 or 15 Wheatstone boxes, they want to be able to take the software that's in those boxes and house it on one server. I'm doing a big project up in Canada right now with streaming. And in order for us to do that streaming project, it's 160 channels of streams to the internet. And in order for us to do that, well, that's 12 of our boxes of our WheatNet or our Wheatstream boxes. That'd be 12 of our own 12 individual IP addresses, 12 boxes. They wanted to house that all on 4 servers. And so we had to adapt our software that runs on our own product to be able to be housed in Docker servers. So that's how that whole project is being done over 4 servers. So that's, I think, the concept that, Frank was saying that, hey, we're going to be both. Yes, Wheatstone's going to be both as well. We're going to make our appliance so that you, the customer, can say, you know what, I just want to buy the appliance from Wheatstone. It's going to work. I have an issue. I call them. On the flip side of that, we have the other customers that say, hey, we want to build our own servers. We want to house your software on our servers. You got them that want to just buy the software and take care of their own hardware. And that's fine too. But us as a company, we just have to realize that now we got to design that software to work on both formats.
Yeah, just one last follow-up on that. So back from my Sirius XM days, we big company, lots of streams also, and you find that yes, in the core of the company and the distribution, we want to do the same thing. At least when I was there, it was an on-prem kind of cloud, although I hear they're moving more towards AWS, but I've left the company. But concurrent with that, you had almost 300 hosts and contributors with home studios, and I have to build something for them as well that's very simple to use, very reliable, and has basic functionality like the kind of consoles you're talking about. So even several of the largest companies are moving and looking at clouds or on-prem clouds, but we also have individual contributors, and there's still small studios at the end of a codec and a home IP connection. So we're kind of both.
Right. Yep. Yeah, somebody asked on here real quick, does the AML or DML have in-channel processing? No, they do not. They are just raw inputs and outputs. There's no sort of processing built into either one of the consoles. So I just wanted to answer that real quick. But anyway, yeah. So as a company, we're going to continue making hardware, and we're also doing software. We're doing it to adapt to both worlds, but we have to be conscious of that when we're doing one. We have to also make sure that we can take that and port it over to third-party hardware as well. So yeah, we'll be that same model for a while.
Rich, I think you had a comment you're going to make. At least I saw you pop up.
This technical stuff is all fine, but more important, what detergent do you use in the dishwasher?
Nothing. No. We do not use any detergent. It just goes in there with straight water. And that's we have a dishwasher dedicated to that. It's just a dishwasher, and it's dedicated for putting boards in there, cleaning them up, but it doesn't get any soap in it. It doesn't do anything from day one. It's just a water dishwasher. That's it.
So if anybody needs to have their console clean, they can bring it to Rich. Just
Yeah, and basically the reason why we do that, everybody, well, why do you do that? The biggest thing why we do it is when we get a board in and we know it's taking a drink spill, and everybody says, well, it was just water. Well, you never know. It could have been flavored water. Who knows? But why we do that is when you're dealing with boards and you're dealing with switches, the switch isn't tight to the bottom of the board. So when you put it into a dishwasher with hot water, warm water, and water, it gets all of any of that residue that may have seeped between those switches or bridged an actual circuitry. It gets that all cleaned up. So that way, when we go to start testing a board, we don't really have to worry about that at that point. But there's been times where somebody's taken a drink spill, and we've got the board in and we've looked at it and we can't visibly see anything. And what we end up finding out is that we take off one of these switches, and behind the switch, there's nothing but sugar residue of some sort that's completely caked up and tore up the circuit board that is basically arcing circuits. So that's one of the reasons why we would do that. But it's just water, no detergents.
Chris Hayes just mentioned the question I was going to ask. Is it distilled water?
We don't use the distilled water. We do have a distilled water sink on our circuit board area. So how do I put this? So we have a pasting area outside of our out of our surface mount department. It's in our pasting room, and in there there'll be a sink with distilled water. And why we have that there is when we paste our circuit boards. So before we put all the components on, there's a machine that this goes in, and it pastes all the pads that components are going to be put on. But what happens sometimes is, the paste goes wrong, or maybe the wrong program was in there, or something happens that paste has to come off that board. Well, that's where we use our distilled water sink, and the board goes in there, and then all the paste gets washed off the board with distilled water. Then it gets um, wiped with rubbing alcohol. Then it goes into the dry room and before it gets reloaded. But that's essentially the only place where we use distilled water.
Actually, my question was mostly just to be a smartass, but it's interesting that you would actually do something like that.
Mm-hmm. And we don't do it to every repair that comes in. It's more or less is, do we see a lot of damage, or do we see a lot of residue, or do we see a lot of evidence of something on the circuit board? And yeah, we do. Well, at that point, let's just go throw it in there just for good measure to make sure that any of it's gone or out of the components before we start our testing, because you could be chasing your tails for hours and hours and hours. If residue is left on a circuit board, they could spend hours on this trying to find something, and next there's something underneath this 60 pin chip that you can't see. So by doing that, it helps get some of those things out of the way in advance.
Darrin, I don't think that a lot of people realize how much water is used in the production process of all audio gear.
How much water?
Yeah.
In the manufacturing process?
Yes.
Well, actually, we do use quite a bit of water. When we do the factory tour, I'll show you our 3D CNC machines. They're all water lubricated, if you want to call it that. So all the bits that do all of our metal work for our rack mount faces, our LXE modules, our L series modules, our rack fronts for the blades, all that goes into a CNC. It uses water to do that cutting. We also use water in our powder coating department, which everybody's like, why would you use water in powder coating? Well, all the steel and all the metal has to be cleaned and before it gets powder coat put on it. So it gets dumped into what we call a stripper, where it strips out all the impurities, oils, and all that sort of stuff from the metal. Then it gets dipped into a giant water tank, which it gets rinsed, and then it gets put a sealer gets put on it as it sits and waits to get prepped for powder coating. So that's another process where we have water involved. And what the sealer goes on for is because it could be 2 or 3 days before they get powder coated, and if you don't seal it, all that metal will rust. Just with the humidity in the air. So that's another area that water is used, and then we have it in our pasting department as well for cleaning paste off circuit boards. So,
do you ever get something in for repair that has the old problem from old days where there's lots of like nicotine and other stuff? I mean, radio stations, I don't know anybody who would ever have that anymore, but if your stuff's installed in a club or something, there might actually be some smoke.
Oh, it still happens today. We get R60s in, D75s in. Heck, we even got IP12, some of our IP product in that when you look at it, you're like, where in the world was this console installed? It was like, it's like it was a silver color when we sold it, and it's like a pewter black color now. I mean, it's just like, what happened? You open it up and it's like full of yellowness, and the switches are yellow. Or like, and it still happens. Not as much as it did in the past, but it does. And some of it we have to address. What's the issue? Is the whole console not working? Is it just a fader? If that's the case, our guys will just address that fader and leave everything else alone. But it still does happen.
Is there
well,
any
they address it out there in the repair department. That's I don't ask them, but they do what they do. And sometimes I know Alan, one of our repair guys, he got a console in that was so bad he told our repair team or our support team that he can't work on it. It was just that bad.
contact high?
So I'm sorry I didn't hear that.
Was that a contact high one?
Well, what was wrong with it? It was just so dirty. The insides were yellow. was like like you said, it's almost like it was in a bar. It lived in a bar all its life that smoking happened. And it was just so bad. And the console smelled like cigarettes or, anyway, nicotine. And it was just, he just refused that he can't work on it. It was that bad. So
Hard to believe, but we used to work in little rooms with a lot of that.
yeah. Do you use Windex for tar from cigarettes? Yes, we do have Windex out there. I mean, they have all the tools out there that they need. Whatever they need to fix the console or fix the product, they will use. But not much of the, not like many years ago where consoles would come in with discoloration all the time. That doesn't happen as much.
Well, under Buckley, the WOR, smoking was absolutely forbidden. If you were caught smoking, you were fired instantly, anywhere on the property. Now, prior to that, under RKO General, I can only imagine, how much smoke was there. And I recall having to go in and clean some of the, sound stuff on the walls because the smoke was so thick.
Well, we're happy that that's not the way things are today.
Right. Well, at XTRA, I was falsely accused of dumping a large Coke into a Pacific Recorders console.
And I know it was Pepsi. You were accused of.
I drank Pepsi. It was not Coke. But we called Jack Williams at Pacific Recorders, and Jack says, "We don't do cleaning."
Well, Darrin, I sure want to take the moment here and thank you for your time today, and I'm looking forward to the tour later.
Yeah, not a problem. Barry, I'll get with you and we'll schedule something up. I'll do my best. I could probably do a tour. I'm going to say it probably 35 to 40 minutes from the start to finish, without somebody next to me. Because usually what happens is you get a question after a question after a question when you're here at the factory, standing somewhere. But I'll be able to walk through and show you guys and show everybody, what this area is, what it all entails. And then, I won't have those questions, but we can get through it probably within 35 minutes to 40 minutes. So we can schedule that, and then I'll be more than happy to do that for you guys.
That'd be great. That'd be great. Well,
Any other last questions from anybody before I cut loose? No, nope.
No, I think that's great. I think you really covered the topic well, and it's not going to chase you away. You're welcome to continue to monitor us, but again, thank you for your time and all that you guys are doing.
Yeah, not a problem. I got to jump off. I got another call around 3:30, and but nonetheless, I appreciate you guys having me. I appreciate everybody listening to me and asking the questions. And again, if there's anything else that you need, please email me here at the factory, or Jay Tyler. Many of you know Jay. You can, or Phil Owens. You can email us here or call us here at the factory, and we'd be more than happy to answer any questions. The AML should start shipping sometime in December. The DMLs right now, the first, I think 15 or 20 of them already just went out the door. The 12 is coming at the end of November. So we will have all these products on the streets real soon. So, Barry, thank you for having me. Everybody, if I don't see you or talk to you before the new year, have a great holiday season and a happy new year. And I'll look forward to doing the tour for you guys.
Excellent. Thanks. Thanks so much.
All right, guys. Take care.